My second movie is Rachel Getting Married from 2008, like I said, directed by Jonathan Demme, starring Anne Hathaway, Rosemary DeWitt, Deborah Winger, Bill Irwin. Quick logline: a young woman who has been in and out of rehab for the past 10 years returns home for the weekend for her sister's wedding. So this movie represents to me the anxiety that exists in families. You know, I am very lucky to come from a family where there's always a lot of openness and vulnerability and love and such. But there were always other people entering the core family zone who were probably not at the same wavelength as maybe we were. And through dinner parties or weddings or marriages, it kind of builds on the theme that I was talking about earlier with doubt, which is when you don't know where people who are supposed to be in your family circuit, where they are coming from and what baggage they are bringing. And then there are these unsaid feelings of past relationships, that the way they used to be, and maybe now they're broken and what have you. All of that always made me very, very anxious.
Mhm.
And to kind of really bring it home and not to get too personal, if I ever saw my parents arguing about anything, I would be a ball of anxiety, to the
Mhm.
point that my dad would have to come and hug me and tell me that no, we are not separating.
Mhm.
It never even got to something like that. It was
Right,
very
right, right.
normal day-to-day things. Oh, I asked you to bring milk and you brought rice instead. That's all it was. But
Right, right, right.
I would be like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen and blah, blah, blah. So I think this movie kind of really gets at that for me, which is just the drama and the mess of families, but
Mhm.
at the same time, the love that exists. And it's complicated. It's very messy. It can be. I mean, my family is like nowhere near what is shown in this movie,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
But it I can see it. But yeah, curious if you'd watched this movie before.
I had not seen this film,
Oh,
and actually this is, if there are any art designers listening, the only reason I never saw this movie is the poster was just terrible.
oh yeah, very bad.
That is the only reason I've ever seen it. So just make sure you make a good poster if you're poster designers out there. But no, I thought the movie was fantastic. I thought that Anne Hathaway's performance was incredible, and the handheld camera, which seemed like a gimmick in the first 5 minutes, actually just made this movie so much more powerful and raw. And yeah, all the things you hit on are essentially what this movie is in terms of anxieties, is the anxieties between families. And when you're on those, family vacations, or you're all like, we would go on trips to visit like extended family, we're all in the same house for the holidays, these things come up eventually. Like, obviously not as dramatic as people's deaths and the substance abuse issues that are talked about in this movie, but all those little things that maybe you're carrying something for the last 20 years and it just comes out in these situations, and remembering that you can't, get away from your past or change your past, but that some you can suppress it sometimes, but in certain situations, especially around family, those things just rise to the top,
Yeah.
and you sometimes are forced to address them in ways that maybe aren't healthy. But arguments can happen in that way, or resentments can be formed, or remember them. So it just shows that the people that you love the most, that can show you the most comfort and the most love, can also be the people that can give you the most anxiety in certain
Yeah.
ways. And that is a lot of what this movie talks about in dramatic ways. Again, the things that happen in this movie are very dramatic, but I think do speak to the dynamics in any family. Whether it's a great family or a family that always has problems,
Totally.
there are going to be these things in the past that come up, and a lot of the passive aggressive scenes in this movie too. I
Yeah.
loved the sequence where the father is getting in this competition with loading a dishwasher with his new son-in-law, and it's just something kind of stupid. It's just, you're loading a dishwasher, but then both of
Mhm.
them, they're bringing into this the baggage that they already have between this relationship of a new son kind of entering in,
Mhm.
son-in-law trying to replace the father, potentially the dad not wanting to let go of this. You're the father of the house, you're the king of the house, and it's all of this is wrapped up in this little thing where there's time, and it's, oh, who can load the dishwasher faster. And believe me, I've seen a lot of that in my life amongst family, of these things where it's like stupid and innocuous, but they care about it so much because there's so many other things that are in the background here. And that again is all those anxieties of the past sort of and the present coming into fruition. And I thought that scene, especially, was just, I thought, wow, this is so brilliant about what actually got, and the acting of the dad especially was just
Oh,
amazing in that scene. And then throughout the whole film, actually, I'm not even sure who that actor was, but man, does he give a great performance.
Yeah, everybody's amazing. It's funny you picked that scene because I think about that scene whenever I load the dishwasher.
Oh
So
no, you get
I've watched
anxiety,
this movie.
or you're
Not
timing yourself. You're like, I can do it
uh,
faster than you.
less than faster, more than I can fit everything. And
Oh, okay.
I picked it up from this movie. Like this
Interesting.
scene is synonymous to dishwasher in my mind since, and it's been since 2009. So it's
Yeah.
crazy. No, you're totally right. Like it's never about the actual act. It's about all the other things, past and present and future, that are all at play. But what I love about this movie is that this movie and these subject matter themes, they have the potential of really crossing over the line. And this movie can become melodramatic or
Oh, melodramatically.
campy
Hmm.
very easily. It will still be effective, but it'll be a different movie. I think the genius of Jonathan Demme and everybody in this movie is that it's just simmering right at that level
Right.
where the anxieties are ratcheting up, but they seem very purposeful. They don't seem that, oh, guess what? We're going to do this now to kind of throw another thing at you. So you're even more anxious. Like her accident. It's
Hmm.
not an accident. It's more like she drives herself into the tree
Right.
at that fork,
Right.
which the predictable thing would have been because when you're watching her, she's crying, she's leaving Deborah Winger's home. You would think, oh yeah, of course you're going to get hit by a truck.
Hmm.
That's not what happens. She
Hmm.
drives herself because she's sort of so pissed at everything. Like this is just totally falling apart. What's there to live? How do I
Right.
heal from the things that have happened? And I have no support. I'm totally alone. It's a very different, it's very dramatic for sure. But what I love is that Demi is not playing with you, and I hate that when directors or screenwriters, they're playing with the audience's vulnerabilities or laying it so thick that then I just totally tune out because it's not real anymore.
Hmm.
Versus in real families, even though this is like ratcheted up, of course, there's a lot happening. Things are messy. Not every day or every moment is full of anxiety or anger because you still love these people. You
Right.
fall in and out,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
one moment you might be having a great conversation with your sister who's like standing up for you, but then the very second moment, some past stupid thing that doesn't even matter, no one cares about, comes up and you're taken back to that old spot in your head
Right.
and you still carry some feeling of resentment or what have you, and that's how it sort of works. And then meanwhile every person's own coping mechanisms are also acting out. Like for the dad, hugging and kissing his daughters and holding them together all the time, that's his coping mechanism, that, oh, we're still a family, everything
Right.
is fine. And
Hmm.
he's louder than life and maybe even a little bit too animated. Some might even say he's hamming it up a little bit, but I think that's his coping mechanism. Meanwhile,
Exactly.
Deborah Winger, being the Deborah Winger of all time, I mean, she's just
She's great in this.
amazing. She's like, great wedding, bye, I'm
Right.
leaving now. It's amazing. And then again, it's not laid thick as to why this family is the way it is, but in that scene you can see everything. You can kind of project what the original marriage might have been like,
Hmm.
but Deborah as the mother and that father, Bill Irwin as the head of the family or what have you. It's all there, but it's not spoken to you, it's not talk to you, which I love that.
Yeah, me too. I think a lot of the credit of that is in the actors, but again, I think for me it goes back to the use of the handheld camera. It's hard to be, I think, melodramatic and overly dramatic in a format that is so supposedly raw and real. It just does immediately ground things for me because it is this handheld
Mm.
camera going through the shots instead of a very planned out. I mean, obviously this was planned out too, I'm sure, but a very, planned out tracking shot, or here's a dolly, or we're going to do a zoom in here. And it, even though I'm sure, again, this all is incredibly planned and staged in terms of what they did with the camera, but because it is handheld, you just sort of assume, oh, this is all natural and raw. So it makes the moments that could be overly dramatic not feel that way. At least that's my how I sort of feel that that's why the camera works so well for me, because it is like all the stuff, with the coping mechanism in Anne Hathaway through drugs and the horrible death of their younger brother, and all these things are in the background could definitely be in a soap opera. I mean,
Oh
all
yeah.
these themes could be in a soap opera and definitely overly dramatized, but it's not. And I think again that is credit to Demi. And one thing that I think you touched on too that this movie also is good at when it comes to anxieties is coping mechanisms and people's different ones. And everyone
Mm-hmm.
has different coping mechanisms to deal with anxiety. And in this movie, you see all these different ways of that. You know, the father, I think, trying to put too much emphasis. It's a form of denial in a way. It's like, no, everything's
Yeah.
fine. We're a family. We're a family. Keep repeating that to yourself. Obviously, Anne Hathaway takes drugs to as her coping mechanism. The mother just checks out, like you said,
Yep.
Deborah Wayne. You're just like, it's fine. I don't need to worry about this. And it's just interesting seeing how all these members of family deal with things differently, which is also true in real life. Like every person is different. Every person experiences anxieties, and every person deals with that in a different way. And I just loved how this movie touched on so many of those forms of that. That was just great. I thought this
Yeah.
movie was really powerful.
Yeah. No, I agree. I will say though, on the handle camera piece, like I agree. At the same time, that can also become quite gimmicky, like you touched on earlier, and it doesn't. The other
Mm-hmm.
thing that can also get quite gimmicky and annoying is all the music rehearsals that are happening for the wedding,
Mm.
which in some that is the score of the movie. There's no other score in the movie. It's the people who are playing who are at the wedding, which could at some point can get irritating and grating, which in fact Anne Hathaway's character actually screams about that. Like, will you stop playing the music? Which I think is so incredible. It's sort of natural woven in
Yeah,
the movie. But it makes sense because, yeah, on one hand, it is working to ratchet up the tension, which we will see in some
exactly.
of your other picks, where there's like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of music used, and
Yep.
we touched on that in Punch Drunk Love as well. But again, it's effortless because these people are here, and it would make sense because these are musicians. Bill
Right.
Irwin was a musician. Sydney,
Mm-hmm.
who's Rachel's husband to be, is a musician. He has all these friends. This is a very quirky wedding with multi cultures and things that are coming together. It would make sense, but it also works as a device to
Definitely.
ratchet up the anxiety. But it's
For
done,
sure.
you know, enough effortlessly as possible to not make it come off as too obvious or too gimmicky.
Yeah, what was interesting about that too that I read after I saw the film was that the
Mm,
music was recorded live on the set. So they were actually
makes
playing
sense.
with the actors to probably make them have anxiety too. It's like
Yeah,
adds to the whole thing that the actors are going through. So instead of having it be added in later in post, they were recording
I
and
love
playing,
that.
which is super rare to have a score being played live while a movie's being filmed is a very odd thing. So I thought that that was very interesting. You could tell in the film too that the way it was being picked up, the sound, it felt like it was diegetic music essentially, which means
Exactly.
music that is part of the story and not music added in as a soundtrack or a score. Thought that was a really clever move that yes did make me as an audience member definitely feel more anxiety in that situation, and then probably made the actors feel that way too to
Yeah.
help them get better into their characters in their moment. So yeah, I just think this movie needs a better poster, basically, because the poster's terrible. It's so bad. It's one of the worst posters I've ever seen. But the movie I really enjoyed. I mean, I enjoy sounds odd because it was
Yeah.
a great film, but it definitely really affected me, and
Oh
it
yeah,
was
it's
a
very
really moving and
affecting.
powerful movie. And Anne Hathaway too, like what an incredible performance. This is
I
before she was
think
such a known actress. I mean, they knew her for Disney films, but this is a big breakout for her for sure.
Yeah, I think this is after Prada. So it's like right that
Hmm.
time where everything is happening. I think this is her career best performance to date, in my mind. This is not an original thought, but I think this sort of feels to me like Demi's kind of apex, if you will, because he gets to combine his dramatic storytelling, but also
Hmm.
his documentary filmmaking because of the form factor. It's kind of a concert of sorts that's happening with all these musicians and this
Right.
playing at this movie, but it's also very dramatic. So I love that, and it's so sad that he left us so soon. He's probably one of my favorite directors.
Yeah, it's a very eclectic output as well. Like these movies do not feel like they're necessarily from the same or look like they're necessarily from the same director. And I say that as a
Yeah,
compliment, not that he doesn't have a sense of style or
right.
he's not an auteur, but this film definitely to me I was feeling a lot of the same ways. Like wow, this is really just a big artistic statement for him, and not my favorite movie of his. I think Silence of the
Yeah,
Lambs will always be that for me, but this definitely is one right up there.
yeah.
Glad you put this on the list, even though again it wasn't an easy watch.
Now.
Made me anxious, but as a movie, I definitely will return to for sure. I thought it was great. Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.